We are recording, so greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I am Renegade Operative, and we have a special TCP podcast. Here we're talking about the best and worst video game remakes and reboots in our top 5 lists personally. Here we have the panel, and I'm going to introduce them all. So first we have Mr. Daybreaker Rain.
How's it going, everybody? Daybreaker Rain here, and I've been looking forward to this. Kind of put it on the back burner for a little bit, but glad we're finally getting around to it.
Next we have Hades Manticore.
Hello, I'm here. I've been looking forward to this since we came up with it in the last podcast I was on.
Next we have Captain Chaos.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I just kind of learned about this, and I did know about it before, but I felt like I should probably get on this too because there are quite a few reboots I remember playing, so I felt like I could contribute quite a bit to this as well.
Next we have Devil Hunter James.
What's up, guys? I didn't know about it either, but I was intrigued, so I'm like, well, I know there's plenty of terrible-ass reboots and good ones, so it'll be a good discussion.
And last we have Sir Brandel. Introduce yourself, sir, you old fucker. All right, you're old. You're old. There we go. We'll pass. So, go ahead, introduce yourself, sir. All right, fuck them. So we're gonna start. we're gonna start with Hades. I want you to go off your list and tell us about the best and worst remakes and reboots in your opinion.
Do you want me to start with best or worst?
Yeah, well, you can start with worst. I think that's more entertaining.
That's true, but it's a lot more miserable, that's for sure.
I'd like to hear
it. My top 5 for worst. Number 5, I would put DMC on there. Devil May Cry. I'm sure we're all familiar with that game at this point, right?
Horrible. Unfortunately.
Garbage.
Very, very true. Do you want me to go more into that, or just like?
Sure. It's your turn, so you can go ahead and go in depth.
I mean, just. God, I wish I knew more about it. But like, I just never liked the marketing that they did with that game, where they basically just spent most of their time saying that that old Dante wasn't cool, and that we shouldn't like the new old Dante. We should like the new one instead. If the old Dante walked into a bar, that whole rhetoric, right?
Oh, yeah, their PR is something Capcom is pretty embarrassed about, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, extends to the modern day, where Street Fighter V has just been like a train wreck, basically. But we're not here to talk about that. That and I think DMC was one of those games that suffered from like the dumbing down, because I guess they wanted it to appeal to a more broader audience, so they just like made it less and less complicated.
Oh yeah,
right?
I give you S ranks for everything.
Brain dead.
Basically,
it is brain dead.
I do hate when like skill-based games get dumbed down for a broader audience. It's just like you don't need to do it at all, but I guess that's what Capcom thinks is best. So, that awful game. To move on to my number 4, Golden Axe Beast Rider is number 4 for me. Just I was like that. I swear that came out in the time where they were doing like dark and gritty reboots of everything because it was so successful with Batman, and I don't know why you would try to make Golden Axe like dark and gritty. It's supposed to be somewhat like lighter in tone. Am I right? It's like supposed to be like Conan, basically.
Yeah, I think I kind of remember that game. The one on the NES, Golden Axe.
No, that was Gauntlet
Was it?
on the NES. Golden Axe was Genesis.
Okay, yeah, it was. I know it was like a side scroller type.
Side scroller beat 'em up.
But that game, and it was more focused on like brutal kills, basically, where you would like counter or parry your opponent, and then you would like do an animation where you like slit their throat, and it just really wasn't that entertaining to deal with. But oh well. Number 3, I'm not sure if this one would count technically, but I had to put Sonic 06 on here because what is that game even?
Oh,
Jesus
I
Christ.
It kind of does, and it doesn't. It counts as a continuity thing, but it writes itself out of the continuity at the same time. It's hard to explain it, but yes,
I just
basically
it counts as a reboot because it was like its whole like own separate universe, right? Because I don't think humans and like Sonic's creatures,
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell to call them, ever interact.
It's like a weird situation.
It
I would
is
like.
the same universe, fortunately.
Yeah,
I think they were marketing it as a reboot, and it turned out to be some sort of weird continuation.
yeah. I mean, like,
Yeah.
the name is confusing because it's just Sonic 06 and not like anything besides that. So I don't
It's-
know that much.
It's
Sonic,
Sonic the
in
Hedgehog,
general.
but
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where, like, because there's a couple of games like that that just are called what the previous games or previous iterations were, and so it's like to differentiate, you have to add the year. You know,
Mhm.
Yeah,
The-
I
the
don't
one-
like that either.
The one thing that really blows my mind about Sonic 06 specifically is the character Silver, because I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Sonic Ultimate Genesis collection for PS3 and Xbox 360, but there's an interview on there with the creator of that character, and that character was actually supposed to be his own game. Like, he was supposed to have his completely own separate game, his own thing and everything, but for whatever reason they just shoehorned him into the Sonic franchise just because they thought it would sell better than him just having a standalone game. So kind of crazy. Like, it's almost kind of like one of those things, like if you could go back in time and convince him to make that game, what it would be like. Would it be as awful as Sonic 06, or would it be like something far better than Sonic 06?
It's kind of weird because they had no problem giving Shadow his own game either, so it's
Yeah,
fucking
no.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it
Edge
turned
Lord
out to be
special
shit.
treatment.
Yeah, it turned out to be awful. So there you go.
It could have been worse. A lot
yeah, it
worse.
could have been Shadow the
Could
Hedgehog.
could it be worse than redoing the game like 20 times to get everything?
Yes,
yeah,
it could have been a lot
God.
worse.
Shut up, Brendan.
I'm being dead serious. Though. It could have been a lot worse. I played worse. It could have been a lot worse.
more I don't know. Just with Sonic 06 is just so weird because it's like the opening cutscene looks like a Final Fantasy game, and it's really weird to see like
Yeah, that
human
was-
beings that look normal meshing with Sonic the Hedgehog. You know, it's like some
Yeah.
weird fan fiction shit.
Oh, with the
Yeah, I
human
could definitely
characters.
agree with that.
Cartoonish characters and realistic looking humans. Like out of a Final
even-
Fantasy game.
Even
Even
mentioned
Robotnik
bestiality.
looking, yeah, I was
Oh,
getting
yeah,
there.
and the implied bestiality is.
She kissed the corpse. That's the worst part.
Yeah,
It's
she, like,
true,
kisses him
Ren.
away.
It's true. That
Yeah, it's like
happens.
You'll be directed
She
right
kissed
there.
that
To
dead animal corpse and brought it back to life.
modern
Okay,
day
well,
Sleeping Beauty.
Brandon's on some bullshit, but yes, that's kind of semi happens.
That game's just so weird, and Sonic 06 is just such a mess of a game, like barely functions. You can watch like so many videos and like Let's Plays about how bad that game is, and it certainly has earned its name as a very terrible reboot of a game. Number 2 is a little more like less known, but have you guys ever heard of Space Raiders?
That sounds really
familiar.
really.
It was a Space Invaders reboot for the GameCube.
Oh,
It had like the same style where you were like standing at the bottom of the screen and aliens would come down at you. And
it probably looks stupid and better graphics. I'm guessing.
it's not you're not like a tank defending off like an invasion. You're like a person on the ground with like a machine gun, like shooting aliens that are coming at you. And like the
Sounds
voice.
Contra.
Oh God, that reminds me of the fucking Centipede one, the one on the Wii, Centipede Infestation. It's the same sort of deal. Like, instead of being like a little ship, you were a person.
That's it right there.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
What the
looks
hell was that?
ridiculous.
That's Space Raiders. It's like Max had a really shitty video game, you know? I wish it wasn't as serious as Mars Attack, because the voice acting is horrible, and I think they're trying to like play it straight, and it just does not work at all.
Yeah, it looks weird on a 3D plane like that.
And
It looks
Yeah,
like
it
almost
does
like
look
a
like
really
a 3D
bad
plane.
Resident Evil knockoff or something, like with aliens.
well, it was the reboot of Space Invaders, if that makes you feel any better, because I guess we need to reboot Space Invaders at a point and make it more serious. I don't know.
How
Yeah, I don't
does
even-
it work?
I don't even know what to think of that game, so I'll just move on. And number 1 worst game for me is definitely Bomberman X-Zero. Like,
Yeah.
dark and gritty reboot of Bomberman?
Was that done by Konami?
Why?
I don't. Was it?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, Bomberman's owned by Konami.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
shit.
what I'm saying. I don't remember who did that because it looks. No. It's such an
Published by
unserious.
Konami.
It's such an unserious video game series. I don't know why you try to give it an edgy tone.
Just look at that
That looks
cover.
ridiculous. The
Also,
name
they
even
had
makes
a
it
spy
ridiculous.
I think that was like a launch.
Iron Man and a Spy Kid suit.
Yeah, it was a launch title for the 360 if I recall correctly.
It was.
Mhm.
Ugh.
Yeah, because I remember looking at it back then. I was just like, "Is that Bomberman? What? What is this? This isn't like wacky wild Bomberman where you're like a little dude with a white hat on. It's just ridiculous." I have
Also,
no idea.
I've never heard of Hudson till now.
I think
They're the
how
ones
did
that do
you-
Bomberman.
they did
How did you
Smash
not
Bros,
heard
dude.
Hudson?
Oh, see, I don't have it on GameCube or Wii or any of that shit, so I wouldn't know.
No, they did the original Smash Bros, like N64 Smash Bros. That's like probably one of their most notable things.
Never owned Smash Bros. Always played it at a friend's house.
And look, it's Megatron.
No,
Oh.
Ren.
Wait,
I think one of the
They
things that
sorry.
it's all
for a
good.
sec.
No, I was just gonna chime in on about Bomberman Zero. Like the thing that I think really blows my mind is the whole that you have to beat the whole damn thing in one sitting. Like you don't get no continues or no save points. It's 99 levels of just bullshit, and it's like who the fuck has the time, let alone the patience for that? Like that may have worked back in the NES days just to make games longer, but it's like fuck. You would think like with a modern console like Xbox 360, you would have some form of save, like maybe like checkpoints every 10 levels or something.
I forgot about that entirely. Holy shit.
Also, can I chime in really quickly? They were thinking about also rebooting Vector Man as well, which I think it got canceled, but that screenshot in the chat is pretty much how it would have looked like. So there you
Well,
go.
I'm glad that never came to pass because Vector Man 1 and 2 are probably some of my favorite Genesis games. So
Yeah, I'm very
Fuck
glad
off.
they didn't do that.
whoever was going to do that, Konami.
I think Sega
Konami.
was behind that.
Oh,
Vector
really?
Man.
Oh, really?
Konami.
It was Sega that was going to reboot it. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well.
One's
I
the
mean, it
greatest,
is their IP, so I mean, I think I would be a little bit more, I guess, a little bit more accepting of that. But if it was still garbage, it's still garbage at the end of the day. So
I agree.
Basically, yeah. They probably just went through like their Genesis collection disc and were like, we haven't rebooted this yet. Let's get to it now.
right.
But yeah, that's my top 5. So whoever's next, go on.
Hades, did you do your best yet?
Oh, did you want me to go back and forth? I thought we would go like worst everyone across, then best everyone across.
Well, if you want to do it whatever way you want, then that's pretty much fine. But I guess James could go next if you're done. James?
yeah.
All right. I was trying to think of something else besides DMC because I knew what someone's going to say it before me. So I mean,
I think
We already
everybody's
talked
gonna have that one.
Somewhere.
Yeah, we already talked about why it's garbage. I don't really need to harp on that one. Doom 3. I think
I was gonna put that on there.
Really,
Yes.
really, who the fuck am I talking to in this chat right now? Get the fuck out. No, no, seriously, Doom 3.
Yes. Compared to the other Dooms, I don't like the direction that Doom 3 went with. I don't think it's an absolutely terrible game. I don't think it's a good Doom game, though. I don't know. The horror, it didn't need the horror, in my opinion. The flashlight was annoying. It's okay, but it's not a good
They
Doom
did
game.
well. Okay, to be fair, they did fix that in the BFG edition.
I'm just talking about like vanilla, like the first time they brought it out.
Yeah, it's super dark as fuck and shit. But I mean, I guess Doom 3 has a certain appreciation to it, considering the fact that they changed the playstyle. It's a lot more slow and methodical. So if you're a big like survival horror fan, maybe that game will appeal to you. But if you're not and you like fast-paced Doom, then maybe you could go to the new one. Yeah.
I like
That's another
survival
reason I
horror.
didn't like that.
I thought Doom 3 was. It wasn't bad, but it was like average in my opinion. Like it just.
Well,
like-
Doom's not supposed to be a slow-paced,
Yeah,
survival horror.
I'm fine with games going in a different direction, but yeah, I agree. Like with it being kind of boring. It's that was my problem with it. Is that it's not really the game. It felt like the game was trying to have you like on the edge, really tense half the time. So, it wouldn't give you that much ammo and stuff, but it really just ended up being more annoying than anything and not really
Yeah.
scary. So
Yeah, I agree with what Ren said. I can see why people would like Doom 3, but as a Doom game, strictly, it is bad. If that's what it's trying to emulate. All right, Chaos is gonna fight me on this. The Lords of Shadow series of Castlevania, aka the Castlevania Lords of Shadow 1 and 2, mostly 2.
I was gonna go. Well, actually, I had two on mine, but I wasn't gonna say the first one because I thought the first one actually was competent in many areas, except maybe for the puzzles. Did like I remember you mentioning earlier, feel very tacked on. Like
There's
I
so
felt like
many.
it could have done without it. Really.
I don't understand. Like, if you play the other Castlevanias, which I already know most of us have, like, there's like
Hello.
basically no puzzles. It's an adventure 2D scrolling game.
Yeah.
Like a lot of whipping.
The worst thing I could see about that game is the combat is very, 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 very bare bones and very basic, and it is
Very God of War.
Yeah, like I can see why people wouldn't like it. It does definitely, I agree, get repetitive. But it's not like it wasn't for me, at least to the point where it wasn't fun. I did enjoy the combat, but
I still like the first game.
Yeah.
Like, aside from the puzzles, I actually think Gabriel would have been a pretty good Belmont for the canon series. Unfortunately, he's not
I
canon.
actually thought the first game was good and it ended on a really interesting note. Like, it had like this huge cliffhanger. I'm not gonna spoil it, but at the very end of the game, where you find out what it well, I won't say it, but basically is a pretty big cliffhanger. It sets up the second game really well, and then the second game takes all that and takes a huge shit on everything. So
cool concept for 2, but it kind of fell flat. Okay,
the introduction for 2 is fucking amazing. Like, I hate that so much because like it was amazing. I thought it was great, and then after that it goes to shit like really quick.
I was gonna say the demo is really good, but then the main game is actually crappy.
The demo is incredibly misleading because the demo is actually the very beginning of the actual game, and then after that it's fucking shit. Like, it's just boring. It's terrible.
I don't even want to talk about what they've done to Alucard compared to Symphony of the Night. They turn him into a fucking Scottish Twilight vampire.
Yeah, and you fight Satan
I don't
again.
like it.
So
the only cool thing they did was that he uses the Chrysogrim. That was it. Everything else pissed me off. Let me see. I don't know if anyone was ever going to mention this. The Thief 2014 reboot.
I was. God damn it! You're taking all my fucking games.
I'm sorry. Great minds think alike.
Yeah, I fucking hated it. I'm not even a big fan of the old Thief games. I hated it. Like,
I don't like it because it's extremely mainstream and there's a far less options, and I don't like how they messed with Garrett's character.
Full of modern conveniences, and that one woman that dies in the beginning of the game, I fucking hate her. She like haunts Garrett. What was his fucking name? Garrett. Garrett for like the entire game, and it's like, who is this woman? Why? Like, I don't understand. And she's just the bitch to you the whole time that she was alive. And it's just, I don't get it. So the whole game ended up kind of being about her, and it's like that annoyed the shit out of me because I hated her character. But
one other thing that's even stupider is, when the hell would Garrett have an apprentice? He's a loner person. He's always been a loner.
They fucked with the characters. They fucked with the gameplay. It's not really hard at all. It feels more like Dishonored, if anything. The only thing I will say I did kind of like about Thief was that they kind of did keep the atmosphere of it, I guess. It did kind of still feel a little bit like Thief.
Somewhat,
but that's not saying much. I mean,
I don't remember. Did they got rid of most of the monsters, actually, if I'm not mistaken? There's only like one,
there
two,
were,
or three.
there were still some, but yeah, most of them were kind of scrap.
So they took out some of the lore, which I didn't like either. Yeah, my main thing was that they changed Garrett way too much, so that pissed me off the most.
I think he had a different voice actor too than the original games.
His voice didn't bother me. It's just how they changed his entire biography is what I didn't like.
Yeah.
Let me see. The last thing I have to say is Star Wars Battlefront, EA's stupid version that came out. I think we can agree that was a very bad start for a new Battlefront series.
It's Battlefield with a fucking space theme.
Mm-hmm.
That's, that Battlefield's actually good, but the way they did it was so lazy and bare bones. There's hardly anything from Battlefront 2. And don't forget, they canceled Battlefront 3 when it was almost done. from the original team. That pissed me off so bad.
Thanks, Disney.
Thanks for that.
Weren't vehicles drops in the new one too?
They didn't even have vehicles really until like they had to patch it in.
Well, they did have. There's a couple of maps that are vehicle based. I was watching my older brother play it, and he was playing, I think, Endor, and it was the mission objective was to take down the AT-AT, and then the enemies could get into AT-STs. So I guess there is some vehicular combat, but not really a lot. At least from what I've seen. I know that was like one of the big things too, is that space battles weren't a thing in the original. Like when it first came out, space battles weren't a thing. And that is like that's what made Battlefront. Like you had not only like the ground missions, but then you had those battles where you could take it to space and get in the ships and just blow the shit out of freaking Kingdom Come on everything, on enemy carriers and crap. And that's what made it really fun. Like Battlefront 2 is probably some of my best memories freaking growing up playing that fucking game.
Pretty much.
So yeah, EA really took a dump all over it. I guess I'm a little bit optimistic for the sequel though, EA's Battlefront 2. I hope that they kind of address a lot of the critiques from the original, because it could be a good game. It could be. I want to be optimistic, but this is EA we're talking about, so
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah,
no, not at all.
I said this in the chat, but Battlefront 2, the new one, it has way more content and features, more than the first. If you bought the first one that they did recently, then you got shafted because they took out space battles, they gave you all this DLC.
There's only like 3 heroes per faction instead of like friggin' 20.
There's one era now, which is just stupid because the Star Wars lore is so diverse now that just having one era is not enough. So I agree. The old Battlefront, those games are amazing. I mean, pick up Battlefront 2, that was the apex of the series back then. Them canceling Battlefront 3 over this, it is horseshit.
And if you got the money for an OG Xbox version of Battlefront 2, get that version because it's got 4-player split screen.
Yes.
Only
yes,
version of the game that does. So, and I would recommend PC because I got it on PC, but the servers are shut down. So the only way that you could do it would probably be like through Hamachi or like
third party,
just LAN play. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, continue, James.
Yeah, you guys said it before. They left out the space battles. Didn't they put something in, but it's like you're just in the sky on a planet or something?
That I don't know.
Because that shit does not look like you're in space. There ain't no black discs or no stars.
Yeah,
all I know is
5 vehicles on the planet, but you cannot go in space. Only high in atmosphere.
That's shit. That no one cares about fighting with air vehicles over the planet. They want to be in space fighting star destroyers and shit.
Yeah.
They have like no heroes. Oh, you know what really pissed me off? They left out so many of the character classes from both the Imperial faction and the Rebels. How many do you even have? Like 4 or 5 in that game? Like the new one?
Yeah, something like that. It's like 4, I think.
There's so many. You could play as like 5 droids alone, like in the Imperial army. That's minusing all the human classes, like the stormtroopers and shit.
Yeah, I mean,
so much they got rid of.
Yeah, I mean, like in the originals, like especially in like Battlefront 2, because they added a couple classes. I mean, it was like just like on the for the example, like the Empire side, you had your like basic rifleman, stormtrooper. You had like an ARC trooper, which was like heavy weaponry. You had the Dark Trooper, which was the one with the jetpack, which was freaking fun as fuck. You know, and then it's like in the droids, you could not only play as just the regular, tan looking droids with like
you
the
could be the
cone heads.
droidicas.
You could be the droidicas and the super battle droid. So it was just like, yeah, I mean, you just had so much variety, and as well as like, from both different eras. Even when you did like the modes where you just played as the heroes, you had a crap ton of variety between the heroes on both factions.
Yeah, they had like 10 or 20. I remember they had like an assload of heroes per faction. Not 3, which is completely pathetic. Also, aren't the heroes really slow in the new one? I'm not mistaken.
From little clips
I
and
think
videos
so.
I've seen, I think they're a lot easier to kill than they were in the original games.
That's dumb too. I've seen people like snipe Palpatine in like 2 seconds. Like, oh, Emperor of the Empire dead in like 5 seconds. Okay.
Yeah, you can kill the characters way faster in this game than the older ones.
Yeah, you guys can keep going. I've pretty much said everything I need to say about it. Yeah, it
Uh,
sucks.
All right, so I guess I can go. I'm gonna go over worst games very briefly. So we got DMC here, DMC Devil May Cry. That game is utterly horrendous. I played it on PS Plus the first time around, and it was Devil May Cry at 30 FPS, which is something no one can defend as a hack and slash fan, and I don't know how people did, but they did it.
They said it'd feel like 60 frames though.
It'll feel like 60. That was the most ridiculous statement I ever
Hey,
heard.
If you
Can I
believe
add on
it is
that?
60 frames, then it is.
Go ahead,
Can
Brendan.
I add on that real quick? The funny thing is that Vanquish is a 30 frames per second game, but it actually feels like a 60 frames game, legit, because how fast paced it is.
It won't
DMC
be that way on
couldn't,
PC
capture.
though.
And the engine does not help DMC because it's
no.
Unreal 3, and Unreal 3 is
Looks like
garbage.
muddy shit by comparison to DMC4. DMC4 looks like a Final Fantasy game.
Next we have Need for Speed 2015, useless. They came back with Need for Speed, and it was an average game, which was
game.
yeah, it was. But Underground was so good back then, and they put a lot of effort into that game. This one was like just put the name out there. Now they're having this new Need for Speed where it's always online, and these features that they're implementing in these Need for Speed games are just terrible compared to the older ones.
But-
Next we
but-
have. I'm good.
Oh, I just wanted to say, but was the crew better than the reboot of Need for Speed? Because I played the crew and I didn't really care for it because it was the same thing. It was always online. It was like an MMO racer, like if that makes sense. Which really, when you really put it down on paper, doesn't.
It's funny because I never played the crew, but they were giving that away for free, so I don't think from the sounds of it, it did well. But I probably will check that out soon, but if it sounds like what you said, then I'm probably not going to be that impressed. Next we have Final Fight Streetwise, because Final Fight needed a gritty third-person reboot where everyone said the word fuck and the gameplay mechanics were horrible.
Fuck.
Next, we have Turtles in Time Reshelled, because you take a great arcade game and you make a remake out of it, and it turns out to be absolute dog shit. It's worse than the original. We already covered Sonic 06. We already know Hedgehog on Human Action is bad.
You don't say.
Next we're gonna move on to the best. So Ninja Gaiden 2004, great game. Ninja Gaiden 2 was also great. That
God damn it, you took my fucking
that
choice.
reboot series in particular, I really enjoyed it. Not 3 so much, but still I found some excitement out of Razor's Edge. Next we have Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. That was also just super amazing how they rebooted it, put it in a bigger world, and gave you a lot to do. I also like the time powers as well, because it's awesome just going back in time in case you fuck up and using the time dagger to consume enemies. I thought that was really fun. Next we have Doom. I forgot what year it came out, 2006 or 5.
Fuck you.
I
Oh,
forget.
no, you're not picking the one I'm thinking of. Okay, good.
It was the 2016, the PS4 one, right?
Yeah, 2016, my bad.
Fuck.
Stop taking my option.
But yeah, Doom 2016 was an amazing game. I still need to platinum it, by the way, but I just love the gore and carnage and how fast it is and how they implement all the old enemies in the modern setting. That was pretty amazing. Next,
Perfect blend of classic and modern put together.
yes. Next we have Mega Man Maverick Hunter X. A lot of people don't like some of the changes in this game with Vile in the beginning and the fact that some of the music is rearranged. But I really enjoyed this remake in particular because they just put their best effort forward into making this the best it could. And it still feels like the classic, Mega Man X. It's a shame that, like Brandon was saying, they canceled a string of Mega Man X remakes because it didn't do so well. That and Powered Up. So we had the
That's
unfortunate.
unfortunate too.
Yeah,
They could
because
have fixed. Oh, sorry, what?
oh no, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Go ahead, Brendan.
Because they could have fixed Mega Man X6.
Oh yeah, that's also true. That could have been a game that really needed some dire fixing because the level design in Mega Man X6 is not the greatest, so they could have maybe fixed those shadow stages. I wouldn't mind them re-including it, but I don't want to be in an area where everything else is just pitch fucky dark and I can't see while I'm platforming.
Hey Ren,
Yeah, I
ever
was-
play Seat Next Stage? You fight the donut like 8 times.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
You better have 0.
I was actually going to add that onto my list, but I replaced it with something else. But yeah, that to me is like, it's not a bad remake. It really isn't. I know that a lot of, I guess like continuity wise, people don't consider that like anywhere because it changes up like story behind Sigma, story behind Vile, which is whatever, that's a discussion for another day. But I think it had potential. Like, I think the PSP was a pretty decent platform for something like that. And it's freaking Mega Man X on the go. Like, you can't fucking go wrong with that. Like, it may be updated graphics. It may have voices and stuff that weren't in the original, but it really did try its best to stay true to the original Mega Man X as much as it could, but between terms of like how the game paces, how the movement is. It didn't fully change it to like, X7, or it was like fully 3D or whatever. So it is a shame that it didn't catch on. It's kind of the same thing with like the Mega Man Powered Up. That could have actually had a lot of potential, and that also had something in it where you could actually make your own levels. So I would have loved to see that like reappear in like the Maverick Hunter X series if they ever did that, where like one of the games had its own level editor.
Oh yeah, of course. I think that also offers up creativity because people like to share stuff and put their levels out there online. So I'm pretty sure that could have went somewhere. And the last thing I have on this list for best is Resident Evil Remake. Just absolutely fantastic. It is the definition of what a remake should be, where they put in like new levels, new enemies, weapons, features. It's the whole fucking kit and caboodle. They have everything you need. That's even better than the original in a lot of areas. That's what I really like what a remake does, when it takes something and it makes it even better than what it used to be back in the past. So Resident Evil Remake is definitely number 1 on my list.
All right, cool deal.
All right, so who's next? Mr. Daybreaker, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I'll run through mine real quick. All right, so we'll start off with worst. At number 5, I had Star Fox Zero as my worst reboot. I was really I was really upset with what they did with that. I've heard nothing but really awful things because of the gyro controls that they've done with the game, the fact that they revisited the same story that we've already been told a million times. Again, it's Andros because herder, why not? That's what really, I think, kind of pissed me off because us who are Star Fox fans really wanted a continuation. We wanted just a story to really go further, and it's like they kind of shot themselves in the foot with Star Fox Command on DS, so that because of all the different endings, there wasn't really an ending that they could, well, I mean, there kind of was, but it was like because of so many endings, they couldn't really continue on after with a coherent narrative. So I think like I get why they would reboot the series, but at the same time, it's just like they really didn't need to. Like people like to argue the whole, oh, well, we're bringing it to the newer generations. Like, it doesn't matter, like, because now this, technically speaking, the series has been rebooted twice. Because the Super Nintendo game was made, and then they were going to sequel that, and then 64 came out so much faster that they just were like, okay, well, we're just going to make 64 the new headcanon, basically. So that's my number 5. Number 4, I originally had something else, but we already talked about it, was Golden Axe Beast Rider, so I went ahead and changed it. Was something that I actually brought up. Centipede Infestation. The game is not overly bad to play. It's just, I don't understand why they had to take something as classic as Centipede and give it like this edgy, kind of like, oh, we got to change up this classic arcade game and give it story. Like, that's not what the old arcade games are really for. Like the old arcade games are there because arcade in of itself is almost like a genre. It's just like a game that you can pop on and play, you know, and get a high score. You know, you're not playing the game looking for a story. Like you were a ship that shot things. I almost said you were a shoop. A shoop that shot things. But you were a ship that shot things. Like that's all that matters. But they change it to where it's like you're this kid with a gun who like has to help this girl with her garden. You have to defend it. You have to protect it from these giant centipedes that just come out of the ground. It's like they almost like took hints from like Earth Defense Force or something with that. But yeah, just overall like really bad. You know, like gameplay wise, not so much, but you know, it can get really monotonous and repetitive because it's like you're doing the same thing over and over with just cheese tacked on, campy ass story, you know, which it didn't need. It could have just been, you know, a badass 3D HD centipede, and I think everybody would have been happy. The third reboot I've got. Now, a lot of people don't know that this is probably a reboot to an already existing game. Is a game called Blades of Time. This was actually considered a reboot to the game X-Blades. X-Blades is not good to a lot of people. I'm kind of like in the middle. There's things that I like about the X-Blades, like the environments. It just feels like there's a lot. They could have done so much more with it. It felt like there could have been a lot more to explore. It could have been almost like a Tomb Raider-esque sort of game, if you will. Blades of Time rebooted it, but completely altered things, and just it was awful. Like instead of now having swords that were in combination guns, it's like, oh, we're gonna have hack and slash melee combat and throw in some over the shoulder shooting segments. Like that was completely unneeded. They changed the story to where now instead of just being a normal treasure hunter looking for treasure, kind of like in the Lara Croft-esque sort of realm, now she's like part of this organization thing. She's got this dude that hangs around with her. It left a really bad taste in my mouth. Like when I found out it was like a spiritual successor / reboot to X-Blades, I got kind of hyped because a part of me does sort of like X-Blades, and I know one of our previous guests does not like that game. He freaking bought it and doesn't like it, but I just it just left an overall bad taste in my mouth. Something that I just go for it.
The sad part is though, I actually enjoy Blades of Time more than X-Blades. I just couldn't get the good feel over X-Blades. So in some aspects, I can see why you like it though, but at the same time, I can't, you know.
Well, and again, I understand that. Like, I have an awful taste for fucking just awful games. There's a lot of games that I like a lot that are just fucking negative reviews, like holding 30 and 20s on fucking Metacritic and shit. So totally understandable. Like X-Blades, by no means, I'm not sitting here defending it, saying that, oh my god, it's a fucking perfect game or whatever. It's fucking not. It's there's a lot of fucking problems with it, but there's aspects about that game that I really do like just some of the environments, and just it felt like there could have been so much more there. Like I think in my mind, it's like I saw potential. And that's kind of the problem, is like seeing the potential is one thing, but actually capitalizing on it is another. So, but yeah, just Blades of Time, that just I couldn't do it. Didn't like it. And for whatever reason, they changed a girl who was normal. The main character in X-Blades was like a valley girl, and then they like gave her an Australian accent in Blades of Time, and that just completely threw me off. But she still had that valley girl like vibe to her, and it just didn't work. Like I just was like, that doesn't mesh well, because like when you think valley girl, you think like Western, you know, like American girls, you know, like, hey y'all, you don't think like freaking Aussies. Like, I don't know, like, but yeah, that just kind of just was weird for me. But so before I go on, you know, for freaking keep going, number 2 for me was Lords of Shadow, the series, Castlevania Lords of Shadow. And I know we already talked about this, but I'm just gonna go ahead and throw out my pieces out there. I would have been fine with the gameplay. I really would have. Like, I just absolutely hate what they did to the lore, because we already had this really long established lore. Because like the thing about what's really cool about the Castlevania series as a whole, aside from 3 of the games being retconned from the actual timeline, you could do pretty much whatever you want, like as in-betweens, and it worked. And you have these cool dark fantasy style games. Like didn't matter if it was a Metroidvania, as people like to call it, or it went back to the traditional side scrolling style. There was a lot there that could have been worked on. There was stuff, a lot of questions, kind of like in the same vein of like the Mega Man series. There was a lot of questions left unanswered, and so like they could have gone back and revisited some of those in betweens, those gaps in the timeline, and talked about what took place during those portions in the timeline. But they didn't do that. They completely reworked the story, and for the worst aspect of it. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody who's interested, but look into that shit, because like I looked into it before I even gave freaking the side-scrolling Lords of Shadow game a fucking shot, and I couldn't even stomach more than like an hour of that. Like I tried to give that one the benefit of the doubt because it's side-scrolling. It's got kind of this weird sort of like beat 'em up style system where it's like you could do combos on enemies and stuff. So that's kind of neat. But just what they did to the character of Simon Belmont, like granted, in the games that Simon's in, like he doesn't really have an established character, so I get it. But still, at the same time, I was just like, God, this, I don't like this. I can't stomach it. And Chaos can disagree with me. That's fine. I know that one of our other members, Brian, we had this discussion. He likes those games, and that's fine. Like I already freaking made a whole video talking about this shit, so that's completely fine. I'm totally cool with people who like it. It's just I can't. As a Castlevania fan, to me, it was a slap in the face. It was disrespectful to me as a fan because they just completely shit all over the lore. And that's probably the biggest pinnacle that I have as a problem with it. Like gameplay-wise, I could probably tolerate the first one, like God of War. It makes sense. Like the idea of just, freaking being able to mow down everything with your whip. Yeah, that kind of sounds pretty cool. Like a Dynasty Warriors-esque sort of combat system. It makes sense to like kind of jump on that because that was what was popular. But it just like, other than that, I was just like, the story just really was what did it in for me. But my number one worst reboot, and then I'll let somebody else take the floor before I talk about my best reboots. My number one worst reboot is Silent Hill Shattered Memories. This fucking game. I don't know who in Konami decided it was a good idea to take a fucking cult classic like the first Silent Hill, completely rework it. Hey, let's make it to where you can't fight the enemies. Let's make it to where it's like Outlast, but over the shoulder. Let's make it to where you can't see 5 feet in front of you 90% of the fucking game. And then instead of hell taking over, Winter Wonderland takes over and everything just turns to fucking ice. Oh, we're going to add in this mechanic where you have a cell phone, and you have to take pictures, and you have to investigate. And like it's almost like they took Condemned and shoved it into a blender with like little bits and pieces of the original Silent Hill and Outlast. And it doesn't fucking work. They just completely wipe what was established with the story. It changes, again, another thing where they just completely shit all over the original story. And I don't like it. Like Silent Hill to me, especially the first 4 games, before they started doing like all the spinoff, the core 4 games. So it's like 1, 2, 3, and The Room. I do include The Room because there's aspects about that game that I actually do like. It was just it had a simple premise. You had those puzzles, you had the backtracking, but you had the melee combat and everything where you could fight against the enemies. Certain enemies you couldn't, like in 4 when it came to like the ghosts and things like that. But it was like that's kind of what made Silent Hill. It was like you had this area to explore, and you had to kind of progress through it by finding keys and solving puzzles and stuff like that. Like whoever decided, oh, we're just going to make it to where you're completely inept against the enemies that come at you. There's these red demon monsters. And that was the thing. I think that was the biggest slap to the face, is like Shattered Memories. It's all the same monster. They just call it like, I think they call it the Nightmare or some bullshit like that, but it's the same monster. It's just this red skin thing that chases you, and it's like, oh well, you got to run away from it because you can't fight it. Oh, but if you have flares, they don't like light. It's like I really don't know why. Like it was just like, I think the ice concept was kind of cool, like in a way. Like it was kind of like a neat take to like, oh, instead of like the Dark World just like somebody turns off the lights and everything just turns to rust, like instead everything like freezes over, and so it makes kind of like for an interesting like change to the environment. But like everything else was just absolute garbage, and I don't know why that game is so expensive. because it's one of those.
What did you think of them changing all the characters, like changing the backgrounds and the personalities for all the characters?
Yeah, that too. I absolutely hate what they did to the story, because it was like, you already like again, kind of in the same thing with Castlevania. You had this
as a fucking hooker, and
yeah, you had this. You changed a cult leader to a hooker. Like, we already had the hooker. Her name was freaking Maria, and that was in 2. So it was like, oh, we're gonna take aspects from the other games to kind of try to fit in with people, so people might like us. Like, whoever decided that, like, it's just awful. Awful. And that's all I have to say about that. And I'll save my best reboots so somebody else can take the floor. I need to shut up for a bit.
Well, I guess that being said, I'm the only one who hasn't gone, so I'll go ahead.
Haven't gone yet.
All right, shit. Well, I guess I already nominated myself, but whatever. I'll be quick. So I'll start off with the worst reboots, as everybody else has. Most of what is on this list is similar to what is on everybody else's list. So, the first one is not. I'll go backwards. This isn't in any particular order, but I'll go backwards from 5. Number 5 I have on here is Alone in the Dark, and that's the reboot of Alone in the Dark. Alone in the Dark was that survival horror game that was before Resident Evil that I think most people say is like the original like survival horror game, or like what it's has inspired like other survival horror games that have come after it. But it has not aged very well at all. Like if you look back at that game, it looks fucking terrible by any standards, really. There was Alone in the Dark, and then there was like some other games I don't really know, but and then there was like the New Nightmare, which came after. I think it came after Resident Evil, because it was like around 2000. New Nightmare, and it's more like the Resident Evil games than it is like the original Alone in the Dark. And then we got the reboot Alone in the Dark, which is basically it took a lot of what was popular at the time. It kind of did this episodic format, and there were some other games that were doing that, so it just kind of, I guess, jumped on the bandwagon there. It did have some interesting concepts with like so in terms of the gameplay. Like, you could look down at your like for your inventory. It wasn't just a menu. Apparently you could like look down in your pockets or something. You could actually like go into first person and like stare down at the things you have in your jacket, and that was basically like what was in your inventory. I thought that was interesting, actually. But there are so many other things about the game that's just so bad that drag it down. Like, it being an episodic game, it really doesn't need to be, because it wasn't like some of these other games like Telltale. Like, they're sold like in per episode, right? It was packaged as like a whole game, and not just like one episode. Download one episode, download the next one, etc. It was just one game, and it really did not need to be in an episodic format, but they did that for whatever reason. And the acting in that game is, in my opinion, it is of the so bad it's good variety, in terms of the voice acting in that, and just not so much just the voice acting, but more just the dialogue is some of the most ridiculous shit you will ever hear. There is 2 specific lines that I will continue to like reference as being fucking hilarious. There's one point near the end of the game. I don't really know the context for this because I have not played this game in a long time, but the main character says like, I'm the light bringer, I'm the fucking universe or something. And even without context, that's just like, it's just the way he delivers that line is fucking hilarious.
Chaos. I don't have your rock, but fuck you anyways.
There's another point in the game where he's confronted by a woman who's been possessed by a demon, and she's like trying to get some kind of stone from him. And he's like, I don't have your fucking stone, and fuck you anyway. And it's just so
ridiculous.
Like, it's just such fucking ridiculous shit like that. And not only that, but just the driving segments in the game are fucking horrendous. The cars handle terribly. it's just not like it's just dragged down by so much bad game design, and it just did not end up being anything noteworthy. It was just terrible. It is just one of those reboots that really didn't need to happen. And Alone in the Dark, in my opinion, is a series that should have just died, because there actually has been another Alone in the Dark game that has come out recently, actually, or not too long ago. It was called Ignition or something. Like, it was just a multiplayer game, and it was terrible. Like, it wasn't any better than this one was. So yeah, it's just a series that I think really should have just stayed dead. It did not need a reboot, and if it did get a reboot, it should have been not what this ended up being. So yeah, completely unnecessary reboot that did not need to happen. Number 4, well, I think Daybreaker and James have both listed this one, but they listed Lords of Shadow in general. I specifically listed Lords of Shadow 2, Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2, because I did not have much of a problem with the first game. I think it was good for what it was. Like I said, I've previously mentioned, I thought Lords of Shadow was fine. It probably helps that I'm not like a huge Castlevania person, and I haven't played too many of the other games, so I wasn't as insulted by like what they did with Lords of Shadow as maybe some other people would be if they'd followed the the Castlevania series for years. But for like new people just getting into it, I don't think they find it too bad. But Lords of Shadow 2, on the other hand, I felt that game pissed me off because, like I said, it had so much potential. The beginning, like the very beginning of that game is great, actually. And it pisses me off because it's so misleading, and it shows you the potential the game has. And then not too much more into the game, it just kind of falls off. Basically, I will have to spoil one or two things from the end of Castlevania or Lords of Shadow 1 just to kind of go over why I don't like this. The concept for Lords of Shadow 2 was basically that you are Dracula in the modern era, and I know that's been done before, but it hasn't really been done in the Castlevania series. So when they kind of showed that was what was going on, it was kind of like a surprise when you saw it at the end of the first game, because all of a sudden, you think you're still in like the medieval fantasy land, but then like Gabriel goes out into the real world and you find out you're actually in like the modern day. So I was like, oh, so I guess if they have a sequel, they're going to make it about you being in the modern day. And that that's what they did with Lord of Shadow 2. So I was actually kind of excited for it. I was like, well, they can do a lot of cool new things with Lord of Shadow 2, like that they haven't done before in the Castlevania series, right? No, the modern day segments in Castlevania 2 are incredibly boring, because from what I remember, most of what you do in the modern day segments is the city is just generally just a very boring place. There's not a lot to it. There's just not a lot to it. It's just there. It's very, very dead. There's not really much to explore. I will say the one good thing about the game is Dracula's Castle. When you go back in time and explore Dracula's Castle, because there's a lot of interesting things in Dracula's Castle that you can, look at. And there's actually some pretty interesting boss fights in Dracula's Castle. But when you go back into the modern day, it's just, the story is just terrible. Like the modern day environment is just bland. They didn't really put a lot of thought into it, and it's just boring. Like, it's just, you kind of want it to be over almost. The story is dumb. I don't remember much about it, but I remember Satan comes back, and you fought Satan in the first game and you beat him, but they brought him back again for no apparent reason. The end of the game, I will just spoil it so nobody else has to fucking play it. The end of the game is bullshit, because you beat Satan, and just the end is literally just Dracula or Gabriel going back into his fucking castle, saying just pretty much saying, "Oh well, we're done," and he just leaves, and that's it.
The game ends.
The ending is stupid.
It's
so
abrupt as shit.
And it's
Nothing
so
happens.
like anticlimactic that it took me by surprise. I was like, really? That I just go through this entire fucking bullshit game just for that? And it sucks because like Patrick Stewart was in that game. And like, it's like, how could you waste your talents on this? Like, he was good in that game too. Like, I felt like he was good in that, and it's like his talents are just wasted on this. Like, it's a shame. He was in the first game too, and he was good in that. But like, yeah, it's like, God, that sucks for him because this game was just ended up being terrible. I remember why. Some other things I didn't like about this game. There's 4 stealth sections that you really like. I don't know why they did this. There's 4 stealth sections where you have to go stealth by these like space marine looking dudes, and it doesn't make any sense to me because you're supposed to be like Dracula, right? Like, why does Dracula have to sneak by people? Like, why can't he just? Isn't he supposed to be OP? Like, why does he have to do this? It's never really explained why you have to do this, and it's very annoying, and it doesn't need to be there. They also bring back some characters from the first game, which I really don't get. They brought back one of the villains from the first game that should have been dead. I believe it was this like vampire chick. I forgot what her name was. But they brought her back, and I don't know why. Like, and for some reason, there's some kind of relationship between her and fucking Gabriel, which was never even implied in the first game. And basically, the second game, in a nutshell, like essentially, the second game just takes everything that the first game did. Because I remember Dave Ricker was talking about like how it's kind of fucked with the lore of Castlevania. Well, think of that and think of 2 fucking with the lore that the reboot, the first game established, and just taking that and fucking with it. Like, that's kind of what that did. Yeah, Carmilla, that's who it was. But yeah, basically, it takes that and just fucks with the lore that the first Lord of Shadow established and fucks with that. So yeah, that makes no sense and it's dumb, and I don't know why they decided to do that. But yeah, it was terrible. I hated that game. Anyways, moving on from that. Number 3, I have Thief, and we've kind of already gone over Thief. Like I said, I'm not really much of a fan of the original Thief games, but the Thief reboots, it plays a lot like Dishonored. It's very modernized. It has a lot of modern conveniences with it. There's a lot of like just general hand holding in the game, and what I mean by that is that there's a lot of very obvious like hints and just places for you to go where you can easily hide from enemies. You don't really have to do a lot of actual sneaking. It's just very easy, and it does not feel at all like a Thief game, except maybe for the atmosphere. The atmosphere does a little bit feel like Thief, but that's, like I said before, not saying too much because it's pretty easy to create like a dark gothic environment like in the Thief games. But yeah, the game does not feel like Thief, and I hated the characters. I specifically hated the woman that dies in the beginning that for whatever reason haunts Garrett for the entirety of the game, and the entirety of the game is just you should feel bad that she died, because it's not her fault that she was in Compton and got herself killed. It's apparently Garrett's fault because he let her die or something. That's essentially what the game is, like the whole theme of the game, it felt like. And I don't know why they went that direction with the story. It made absolutely no fucking sense. But yeah, it's basically like Garrett should feel guilty about that. And that's like the whole point of the game. And by telling you guys that, I should have hopefully saved you from playing this god-awful piece of shit. So you don't have to experience that, because that was essentially the entirety of the game, or at least the story. And it's fucking terrible. But anyways, I guess we should move on from that. Number 2, obviously, we've already gone over this like 1,000 times. DMC, Devil May Cry. I will play like the I will sort of diverge a little bit here and say that the gameplay isn't it's okay, like it's serviceable, I suppose. And even saying that, I'm going to be crucified, but I will say it's serviceable. Like it's definitely playable. But it's still definitely just mediocre. It's like people have said, it's not challenging. You don't really need any skill to play it like the other DMC games. You actually need to pull off combos and figure out how certain combos work, how to pull them off, what to, where to use them, how to use them, et cetera, et cetera. in DMC, it's just like, yeah, just button mash, and you pretty much have like an S rank. That's pretty much how the combos work in DMC. And the story in Devil May Cry, which is pretty much how the game, what the title of the game is just. I do like that they went in a new direction. I will say that I do like they went into a different direction. But it's one that really doesn't really need to have been in a Devil May Cry game, I guess. They went with this whole kind of they live plot where it's like the media is controlling everything, and you can't see the demons, but they're everywhere. It didn't really work for Devil May Cry, and it just should have been left alone, in my opinion. I didn't really think they should have, in general, just made the game at all, but yeah, there you go. And actually, my number one is something nobody else has mentioned. Medal of Honor, the Medal of Honor reboot. I hated that game. I hated that game because I grew up with the Medal of Honor games as a kid, and I felt personally insulted by that game. That game is basically like a COD-esque military shooter. It's pretty much like every other modern military shooter you've ever played. There's nothing special or unique about it or anything like that. Medal of Honor has always kind of been like about World War II, just World War II games. And Medal of Honor, I think it was 2013, I believe, was basically, it was set in Afghanistan, and it was like a modern military shooter. And yeah, it's pretty much everything you'd come to expect from modern military shooter. There is nothing at all about the game that would remind you of like a Medal of Honor game. It pretty much just tried to jump on the bandwagon, and that's why it was kind of just nobody cared about it. I have not played Warfighter, and I don't want to play Warfighter because having played the first Medal of Honor reboot game, I just really have no desire to play any of the other ones after it. I don't even know how that got the Medal of Honor reboot even got a sequel, but somehow it did. The only reason I think you should buy the Medal of Honor reboot is to just get Medal of Honor Frontline, like the HD edition of it. Because when I got Medal of Honor, the reboot on PS3, I got an HD version of Medal of Honor Frontline. I don't know if that happens with any of the other editions of the game, but that's what I got. And that's the only reason I'd tell people to buy it, just to get the HD version of Frontline. Because Frontline is like one of my favorite video games in general. Medal of Honor Frontline is a great game. Play that instead. Play the older Medal of Honor games instead. Do not play the reboot, because the reboot is just another by-the-numbers military shooter, another one of the military shooters that have been saturating the market for years. I would avoid it like the plague. So,
just to chime in on that, the reboot of Medal of Honor was done in 2010. Warfighter was done. Warfighter was done in 2012. But yeah, I definitely agree with Frontline. Frontline's a great game. My favorite Medal of Honor was Medal of Honor Vanguard on PS2. That one's really good too. So yeah, definitely.
I also really like Rising Sun. Rising Sun's fucking great.
Yeah, definitely stick to the older Medal of Honors if you're gonna play Medal of Honor. There's a reason the series has been dead in the water for 5 years.
Yeah. I think Brandon wanted to go next. Unless you guys want me to go over the best games real quick, I could do that.
Sure, you can.
Okay. Ren, what the fuck? Why did you put that cancer in the chat?
Well, you said, there's been a surge of generic shooters, so I could only think of Rogue Warrior, the greatest game. Bring the noise,
that game
bitch.
is fucking amazing.
The swearing is just so fucking stupid.
Yeah, Mickey Rourke. Jesus.
But go ahead to your best list, Chaos.
All right. So best reboots. This one will probably be a lot quicker than the worst ones because I probably don't have quite as much to say about these. Number 5, I would go with Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider is a mixed bag for some people. Some people don't really like the Tomb Raider reboot. I have not played Rise of the Tomb Raider yet, but the Tomb Raider reboot I thought was actually good. I liked quite a bit of it. I didn't like. I liked and I didn't like what they did with Laura's character. I feel like they could have made her a little bit less. I feel like they could have made her a little bit less whiny. I understand why she was, but at the same time, it did kind of annoy me at times. I liked that it was a little bit like more gritty. They tried to sort of go with a more mature feel to it, like a more graphic, gritty feel to Tomb Raider. For a lot of games, they try to do that, and it feels like really unnecessary at times. But I guess for Tomb Raider, it kind of worked out. I will say that people's main complaint with it is that it feels a lot like Uncharted, and I do acknowledge that, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It didn't feel too much like Uncharted that it felt like just a ripoff or anything like that. I felt like there was enough differences for it to just feel like its own thing. But yeah, I did actually really enjoy the reboots. I hear that some people say Rise is better, and some say it's not, so I'm not sure. I still haven't played it, but yeah, the reboot for Tomb Raider wasn't too bad. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it's amazing, but it's not bad. I feel like the main thing they really need to address, and I'm not sure if they do in Rise, I'm pretty sure they don't, is to make the tombs bigger. Like, because the main complaint I had with the original or the reboot, I mean, is that the tombs are too small and they're just these little things, and you kind of explore them and you're pretty much done. They're not like big tombs or anything like that. Most of the time, you'll find yourself kind of exploring the mountain or anywhere besides the tombs, which was kind of weird because it's called Tomb Raider and you're really not exploring tombs too much. So, yeah, I can see that kind of being like a lot of people's gripe. But yeah, it's they really need to address that in if they're going to do any more installments of that. Next on the list, Ren has already gone over these. Ninja Gaiden, the 3D Ninja Gaiden games, I think are fucking great. I don't really have too much to say about them. I have only really played 2. Have not beaten 2 yet. I have the original game. I have Black. I have Razor's Edge. I have 3, but I have only really played 2. But I did like 2. I really enjoyed 2. So I would have to say just by going by that, then they're probably pretty decent. Well, no, I have also played Sigma. Played Sigma on the PS3. I really like Sigma. But yeah, I don't really have too much else to say about Ninja Gaiden. Number 3 would be Doom 2016. It is a blend of the original old school first person shooters and kind of the modern first person shooter games, or pretty much just the old school mechanics with like a new coat of paint. Like that's pretty much what Doom was. And I really enjoyed it. I really like games that they have like the old school feel of you have health packs and you have, you don't have restrictions on how many weapons you can carry. You've got like a ton of weapons and you can pretty much just go all out against enemies, just like shoot up a bunch of enemies. Like I love that kind of gameplay style. So I like when games especially like games just, have that retro feel to it. So that's how Doom felt. I mean, it did have obviously modernized mechanics, but they weren't like annoying or intrusive or anything like that. It wasn't like Doom 3 where it tried to be something entirely different. Doom 2016 basically went back to what Doom was supposed to be, and I really like that. So next on the list is the Resident Evil remake. Ren's already talked about this one. Resident Evil remake basically completely redid the original Resident Evil with in a new engine. It looked fucking great. It gave us some new things, basically like presented us with some new concepts like the Crimson Heads and basically some new things. Basically it gave us a lot of old with some new, and I think that's the perfect like blend for like a remake, and that's basically what the Resident Evil remake did. And it also kind of made the mansion seem pretty unsettling and pretty scary. I know the original game, a lot of people when they first played it were scared of it, but when you go back and play that now, especially with the cheesy ass voice acting and dialogue, it really kind of loses that whole scare factor it may have had when you played it when you were a kid, maybe when the first time you played it. I think remake fixes a lot of that. You can go into remake and it's definitely because of the modernized the modernized graphics and just the atmosphere and everything, it definitely is a lot scarier than the original because of all the modernized graphics and just not having that fucking cheesy ass dialogue and the bad voice acting. I think that definitely helps with making it feel a lot scarier and just generally more tense than the original did on the PS1. So moving on to number 1, I originally did have Prince of Persia: Sands of Time on here, but since Ren's already talked about that and I didn't really have too much to say in regards to Sands of Time, I actually changed it to because I was also thinking about Doom 2016 when I came up with this option, but I came up with Wolfenstein: The New Order. I really feel like I love this game, and this is kind of what I was talking about before with the game kind of gave us sort of the retro FPS kind of first-person shooter with modern coat of paint. Wolfenstein: The New Order kind of did that, and it gave us a new story and everything. Like, I kind of like the direction they took with the story. It was also a little bit different because they went a different direction with the story, but it wasn't bad. Like, it was cheesy, but it did kind of take itself seriously at times. Wolfenstein was always kind of a cheesy game. I will say the only thing serious that New Order kind of changed was it did kind of take itself a little bit too seriously, but it never really felt like it was bad in doing that. Like, it felt like, it was still pretty self-aware of what it really was. And, it didn't feel like it was too, it didn't really feel like it went too far with it, I guess. But I feel like Wolfenstein: The New Order just really, in my opinion, does not get the same amount of love that it deserves. I feel like people look at Doom 2016 and they're like, oh, that was so amazing. It did such a great job at, giving us what Doom was always about in, like, basically just with a new coat of paint. But they kind of ignored that Wolfenstein: The New Order did exactly the same thing. And I just feel like it gets overshadowed by Doom far too often. And I feel like New Order was fucking just the first thing that really did that. I think it was a great example of that. And I would highly recommend people play that game if they enjoyed, like, the old Wolfenstein games. It's definitely what you've come to expect from Wolfenstein, just basically with some modern mechanics and set in sort of like an alternate future. But, it's definitely feels like a Wolfenstein game. So I think that was a great reboot, in my opinion. And that's pretty much all I have.
It's still one I haven't gotten around to playing. I had it for a bit, but then I sold it because I think I was a little strapped for cash at the time.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to go back and play Wolfenstein: The New Order. Everybody who I know that has played it has always told me that it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a great game.
Yeah. All right, it's my turn now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm just gonna start with the worst, honestly. Number 5 is Mirror's Edge Catalyst. This is 1, an unnecessary reboot, and 2, it's more or less a rehash of the first game. It's basically the Star Fox Zero of Mirror's Edge. It's a rehash of a previous game that is not necessary. Overall, it's not a bad or unplayable game, but no.
I thought that was a sequel. Like, I know people were saying it was a reboot too, but I actually, when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, it's a sequel. It's like, no.
I think it was originally supposed to be a sequel.
It was originally a sequel, but he turned around and made it a reboot. For starters, making a sequel wouldn't work because it's in the future. Mirror's Edge is in modern day setting, not the future. So a sequel wouldn't work at all. So they had to reboot it because the settings are different.
Didn't they ruin Faith's character in that game?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid that topic.
Yeah, the original Mirror's Edge is actually good. I would recommend people check that one out. I beat the original Mirror's Edge. It wasn't a bad game. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. So to hear the Catalyst is such a just disappointment, just kind of, it's a shame because Mirror's Edge was a good game.
Once and drop it like I did. Because there's no need to continue afterwards. So unless you really want to 100% the game or you enjoy the game a lot.
Yeah,
so.
People say the story is crap and it also has a lot of technical issues. Apparently, I don't know if they fixed that, but
Beta had a shitload of frame rate issues.
They did fix the issues from the beta. I can confirm that at least. But the thing is, though, for a story, they tried to make it more serious, and it failed. Mirror's Edge 1 didn't have a serious story. It was more straightforward and simple. No harm, no done, you know? So when they tried to give more depth into the character, say it's an origin story of Faith, I heard that before, but I'll get to that later. It wasn't an origin story. It was just a rehash, and nothing happened. Basically, they did the Amazing Spider-Man 2 for this game. The trailers, the scenes you see in the trailer, happen at the end of the game. I am not kidding. But that being said, next on my list is, well, Medal of Honor. I actually put the sequel on here because I find that kind of worse than the first game that came out prior to the Reboot series. Yeah,
Oh,
Chaos
Warfighter.
already covered it.
Yeah.
Next on my list is Golden Axe Beast Rider. That game is an abomination. I would consider that equal to Sonic 06 because they completely deviated from what made Golden Axe, not the gameplay, but what characters they had and how it was established, sort of, you know. Yeah, it was a co-op type game. Now it's kind of like a predated Horizon in a way with all these dinosaurs and whatnot, but it was horrible. Next is Full Final Fight Streetwise. The game could have worked if it wasn't Final Fight. No, I didn't have a problem with the setting though, but it was executed so poorly. Plus, if the gameplay acted more like, say, God Hand, then yeah, it might have would have worked out better. But obviously it didn't. Now, for my number one pick, which is the most obvious, is DMC Devil May Cry. Now, my main reasons why I hate this game is what they did to establish characters, particularly Dante, Virgil, and Sparta. For starters, for Sparta, he's a cuck in the game. He went from having to defeat the entire demon realm, having a cult worship his name like a god, to this gimp granddaddy of a cis male. I don't know.
He's a middle-aged loser. That's what they turn him into.
Wait, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the Devil, or not Devil May Cry, but Dead Rising?
Sparta.
We're talking about the DMC reboot. Sparta is basically a gimp. He's a gimp pimp motherfucker, and he's wearing leather bondage.
No, he doesn't pimp, man.
Well, he's not even a pimp. He's just a gimp. There you go. But yeah, it's terrible. Continue, Brandon.
But Virgil was probably the worst because he went from being a kind of an armed fighter to shooting
there you go.
abortions.
Visual aid.
And then here we have Dante. No, the game itself explains why the character sucks. But let's move on to my I guess best list, unless somebody else want to go on the best list.
It's up to you. You can go if you want.
Okay, well, I'll go then. At number 5, I'd pick Metroid Prime, if that counts as a reboot. I'm not entirely sure, but that's what got me into the Metroid series.
How much was there a lot of? If there was a lot of time between that and the last game before it, I would say so. But technically speaking, it is canonical. It's canon to the timeline. It takes place. I think it's in between Super and Fusion, if I recall correctly. I think some people put it after the first one before the second one, but it's kind of somewhere in there. But it is canon to the storyline.
Okay, so I didn't remember, but yeah,
It's all good,
I'm gonna move on to the next one. Oh, what was it? Okay, well, Tomb Raider is number 4. Is in some aspects kind of underrated because people give a lot of fight for being too much like Uncharted, which is true. But to his defense, though, at least the gameplay, the gunplay specifically, is better than what Uncharted has. Uncharted is more, I guess you could say, linear, whereas Tomb Raider specifically has more customizations for your weapons, so you could do more. You have more options available to you. Now, to deviate a little bit to answer somebody's question. To Daybreak, I believe. There are actually 3 timelines of Tomb Raiders. You could argue 1 and 2 could be one, though, but it's technically 3. there's the core designs Lara Croft, which is 1, 2, 3, Last Revelations, and Chronicles.
Crystal
That's
Dynamic.
their Lara. Then you have Anniversary and Underworld in the top down shooter games. That's Timeline 2 Lara. And Timeline 3 Lara is the reboot we got right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because technically in Last Revelation, didn't Laura die?
No. She didn't die. She was originally supposed to die, I believe, but she's not dead. She survived, but barely. Somebody rescued her, and then was leading to Angel of Darkness.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, if you know the story, you'll get the idea why she's depressed in that game. But that's a different story altogether. But all right, I guess I could move to number 3. Number 3 of best reboots is Doom or Dom. That game, like I said before, is a perfect blend between modern and fast pace, and it does everything right. For number 2 is Mortal Kombat 9. Although I'm not the biggest fan of how they start up the story on Shao Kahn winning, although he wasn't present at the temple after a certain point. But that's a different story.
Yeah, didn't they take
But it
Shao
was
Kahn
a
away
brilliant
in Armageddon?
saga that took him and flew him off to the distant mountains.
Yeah, that makes no sense. He somehow got back to the temple. Holy shit.
Yep. But it makes sense on how they did it though, to at least start off the reboot and redo the structure and whatnot. But at the same time, it was breakdown. But what can you do? Is the Ninja Gaiden, the modern ones. I freaking love these games, especially 2. 2 is my jam. And it's a great way to transition a game from old to new, like completely modernize it and she do it right.
Amen.
And that's all I got to say.
All right, so I think it's time we could do outros since everyone already went. So we're gonna start off with Mr. Chaos. Where can we find you, good sir?
you can find me on YouTube and Twitter at Captain Chaos. If you like Let's Plays, reviews, unboxings, etc., all that kind of stuff, you should enjoy what I do. Yeah, that's about it.
Hades. Oh wait, if you haven't done your best yet, then
Yeah, I
now's
don't
the time
think he
to
did
do
his
it.
best yet.
I haven't done my best yet either.
Damn.
You all stole mine.
GG,
So I don't have to.
unorganized fucking.
I think we could do them on outros, so it's no problem really. So Hades, do your best picks and then do your outro. Hello? Oh, I think he's dead. I cannot hear him.
I saw his mic showing up there for a minute.
Yeah, I can't. We can't hear you.
Discord. Try
Well,
leaving and coming back.
Yeah, try leaving and coming back. Can you hear us now?
Or if that doesn't work,
good
you
now?
just... Okay,
Yeah.
good
Yeah, there
now.
you go.
Okay, Jesus, I have this problem with Discord all the fucking time. It's really annoying.
Yeah,
But,
I know, man.
Number 5 for me is Ninja Gaiden. I like the weapon variety. I like how good it looked and how fun it was at the time.
Is that it for your best?
I think his mic cut out again.
Yeah.
Discord, goddamn.
Technical.
No, he said hold on a sec.
Yeah, sorry. There's like a
Oh,
fight
okay.
going on outside. I had to fucking shut my window. I don't know what the hell's going on out there.
Uh-oh.
Jeez.
World Star.
Bro,
Yeah.
I can call it a day.
Number 4 would be the Killer Instinct that came out on Xbox One. I loved it. I love how good it looks. I love all the new characters and all that shit. And I thought it was a really good reboot for that series, basically. Number 3 is definitely XCOM Enemy Unknown. I've been playing that like nonstop recently. I forgot how like fun it was, how tense it was, how like frustrating it is when your rookies miss every shot that matters. It's a ridiculous amount of fun. I love it. Number 2 is Shadow Warrior. Shadow Warrior, I think, was like originally like a Doom clone way back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought it back on like PC as like a 3D game, and it's really fun. Lo Wang is a great protagonist. Using the sword in first person isn't that bad, shockingly. Usually, if like first person melees kind of suck, but in that game, it's actually pretty good. And my number one is Mortal Kombat, the 2009 reboot. Was it right?
Oh, okay. So MK9.
Yeah,
I
MK9 basically.
hold on. I think it was 2009, 2010, somewhere around there, somewhere.
2011.
2011.
Yeah, 2011.
All
Okay, okay.
Yeah, those are my top 5 best. The outro now, right? Or no?
Yeah, outro. Because that's next.
All right. I'm Hades Manticore. I'm on Twitter, Hades_Manticore. I'm on YouTube, youtube.com/videogamesho. I do Let's Plays and various other kinds of videos.
Guys, I actually lied to you. My my favorite reboot currently is Prey. Just kidding.
Is that actually a reboot of that game or no?
It is a reboot, I would say.
Huh.
But
I
yeah,
should have put that on my worst list. God damn.
I think it's I would say the game itself isn't bad. I think what happened for the game to have happened in general is bad. Like what happened behind the scenes basically is bullshit because we would have gotten Prey 2, but Bethesda said it's not up to quality standards, so they canceled that and gave the rights to Prey to Arcane, and Arcane basically made a System Shock essentially and called it Prey.
Well, what people are saying is the demo's bad, but the game has some merits, so I don't know what's going on with that.
Okay, so I'm like 2 or 3 hours into it. It's actually not bad. Like it's all right. Like it's good. It's not terrible, but it's not amazing. No, I think I would have definitely preferred Prey 2 from what I've seen of it, because like I said, Prey the reboot feels just more like BioShock or System Shock than it does like because Prey was originally just a first person shooter, and this game has basically if you played System Shock, this is essentially very similar because it has RPG elements, and if you play the game on hard, like I've been playing it on hard, and I don't like how the game kind of approaches combat. I will say that because there are literally only from what I have, there's only 2 options in terms of combat. You can either use these fucking grenades or occasionally distraction grenades you have, or a shotgun or a pistol, and they literally give you a fucking bolt, crossbow that shoots Nerf bolts. I shit you not, it shoots Nerf bolts, and it doesn't do shit to the enemies. Maybe it does eventually, but right now it does nothing. And I don't know why they gave it to you because it's
also
fucking useless.
Isn't Arcane the developers behind Dishonored? So it seems like they just dump Prey on these guys real quick.
Yeah, the enemies are very basic. I'll say that they're just shadow things, Yeah. But yeah, you also have you have the glue gun, and the glue gun is basically just something that can cover enemies in this fucking substance, and it'll inhibit them somewhat, and you can use that and then go over to them and hit them with a wrench, and it doesn't do much to them sometimes. So it's they'll continue to shoot you. So it's kind of fucking bullshit how that works. I don't know. I honestly, like I said, if I would have given the option, I would have just had rather them have done Prey 2 than whatever this is. It's not terrible, but it's not amazing. So yeah.
Okay. That was a great diverge though, because
I felt like we should definitely at least talk about that, considering the topic, of this being a reboot.
Yeah, because not many people I know personally has played Prey, so I think that's great to get those impressions out there.
It's definitely kind of a mixed bag so far, I'll say, at least. IGN gave it a 4, and I think that's horseshit. It's not a 4. I don't know who the fuck apparently he gave it a 4 because he ran into a bug, and because he ran into a bug, he gave the entire game a 4. So yeah,
well, it's IGN. You can't spell ignorant without IGN.
It's a fucking 9. So
you can't spell ignorant without IGN. Come on.
Yeah.
All right. So Daybreaker, do your best and your outro.
Alrighty, I'll do these. I'll get these rundowns pretty quick. So number 5 for me for best reboots was Star Fox 64. That game has a special place in my heart. It always will. big Star Fox fan, so that was right up my alley when that game came out, and I think that's probably one of the definitive N64 titles, if anything. It's a game I always find myself going back to if I'm ever bored, because it's something that you can beat really quick. So it's just like one of those like 1-2 hour things. And it's always fun. It's always fun to me. So number 4 would be the Shinobi reboot on PS2. Albeit it is a difficult as fuck game. It is freaking hard, but I love the crap out of it. And I've always enjoyed it. I've never beaten it fully because I always get stuck somewhere in the later levels because it takes a lot of memorization to really remember like enemy layouts and stuff like that to get through the levels. But it's fun. It's fun. Way better than the reboot that they tried to do on 3DS. I didn't really care for the 3DS reboot too much. But yeah, definitely check that one out. And its sequel. Its sequel's pretty good. Nightshade here in the US, Kanochi in the other parts of the world. Number 3 for me, I know this doesn't technically count as a reboot, as more of a return to the franchise, but it was dead in the water for about 11 years before they finally made it. So number 3 for me is Donkey Kong Country Returns for the Wii. I think that game, it really took everything that made the Donkey Kong Country games on Super Nintendo as great as they are and as memorable as they are, and just revamped it and just made it, it's just pure bliss because it just goes back to the roots of the series. The N64 game diverged so far from it and was so much like Banjo-Kazooie. It tried so much to be like Banjo. That I'm glad that when the reins were handed over to the company that made the Donkey Kong Country Returns, that they went back to the original format, and it works really well. And then Tropical Freeze, which is its sequel, is freaking phenomenal. Great Wii U title. So definitely recommend those. Number 2 for me is Blood Rain Betrayal. The Blood Rain series was kind of dead in the water too, and then this came around. It's a side scroller hack and slash. It's really fun. I like the art style. I'm always a big fan of the hack and slash genre, and just the side scroller beat 'em up genre as a whole. So I really enjoyed that game a lot. Really captures how Rain is, and it's just a really neat entry into the franchise. A lot better than the movies.
I actually heard that game got a lot of bad reception, surprisingly. I was actually going to check that one out too, but
which is weird. I would definitely say if you could pick it up cheap, because I know it's on Steam. If you could get it like in a bundle or on sale, I would definitely.
It is like $3. Last time I saw it was pretty cheap.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely, I would say I'm optimistic enough to say that I enjoyed it. If it didn't hold over well with people, maybe they wanted to, return to the actual 3D Blood Rain games. I don't know per se, but I enjoy it. So number 1 for me, Hades already talked about it. I was surprised somebody mentioned it, but Shadow Warrior 2013. I absolutely fell in love with that game. It was one of the launch titles, I think, on PS4 and Xbox One, and it always captivated me. Like I would read the back of the case and be like, "Man, this looks like something I'd enjoy." But if with how much people talked about like what Doom did, what Wolfenstein New Order did, Shadow Warrior did it as well. It's just fast paced. Action at its finest. You just got a bunch of demon hordes that you can cut down with your katana, or you can blast them in the face with your several different weapons that you get throughout the game. Again, like what Hades said, Lo Wang is an absolutely enjoyable character. I love everything about that character. Probably one of the best things is the fortune cookie hunting. I have a bunch of screenshots of the different fortune cookie sayings, because some of them are just absolutely ridiculous and just over the top hilarious. It really captured what made, I think, the original Shadow Warrior fun and something different from the typical Doom mods or Doom, whatever you want to call them, Doom clones. So I would definitely say that is probably my favorite reboot as of late. But yeah, I'll go ahead and do my outro. So you guys can all find me on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube at Daybreaker Rain. You can also find me on YouTube at Daybreaker Rain's LP channel, where I do Let's Plays. My main channel is mainly for my live stream archives and my Just Another Gaming Rant series. I'm trying to stay away from Nintendo subject matter. I really find myself wanting to make videos about Nintendo, but I like 90% of, or not 90%, but like 50% of the videos I've uploaded in that series are Nintendo based. So I'm like, I should rear it back a bit, shouldn't I? But yeah, you can find me there. And I'm doing a lot of different LPs right now, so if you guys want to check that out, and if you could do anything, check out my Twitter and check out the pinned tweet, and please cast your vote for my Extra Life 2017 campaign of what you guys would like to see me play over the course of October leading up to game day. So I've got a couple of different choices up there. So if you guys don't mind voting, I really appreciate it.
All right, next, Mr. Brando. Where can we find you, buddy? I think he's toast. All right, so we're
Find
gonna
him
move
in
on.
the afterlife.
Oh,
Right here.
well, time to do your outro then, Figure.
Twitter, Arcade Magic 514. Instagram at None of Your Damn Business.
All right, next up we have Mr. James.
You can find me on Twitter at DevHunterJames, twitch.tv/TheHeroJames. Oh, no. Actually, I forgot. Twitch let me change that. So it is DevilHunterJames now. So he's just saying it. And yeah, that's about it.
All right, who else? I think that's it, pretty much. I think I have to go for outros. So you can find me on Twitter at RentOperative_. You can find me on YouTube at Renegade Operative and on Twitch at Renegade_Operative. I probably will be doing some stuff in the future, just brainstorming some ideas. I know I have to do a review next week, so that's probably going to be coming out soon about the order. Yeah, I'm gonna write that review tonight. But until then, this is the TCP signing off. Also, we'll probably do after hours later because this podcast was like an hour and 30 minutes. So I think that's enough content for you guys out there in YouTube land. Until then, take care. I think this was pretty great. And this is the TCP signing off. See you later.
Take it easy, guys.
Bye.